It's time for Mayor Monday. This morning, we're headed to Clackamas County to check in with the city of Lake Oswego.
Lake Oswego is a bustling suburban community that's home to many Portland area business leaders and professionals. And joining us live with some updates for his city is Lake Oswego Mayor Joe Buck. Good morning.
Good morning to you both.
Well, we understand that Lake Oswego is working to improve pedestrian and bike infrastructure. Tell me what's happening out there on that front.
Well, that's right, Ken. So our metro area planning has long centered around the town center concept, which allows dense housing to proliferate around transit and commerce hubs for folks to have the services they need within close proximity to their homes. So this type of urban design concept is great for reducing vehicle trips and encouraging transit. But now we're seeing the urban design in our suburban environments that still remain heavily dependent on vehicle trips. So while we lobby for more transit, many of those decisions are outside of our control. So we're focusing on what we can do to create a more pedestrian and bike-friendly environment within the town. So cities have a great deal of expenses, from providing for public safety to running libraries and parks, planning for the future. In that long list of expenses, bike and pedestrian infrastructure makes up, for Lake Oswego, the largest unfunded portion of our capital improvement plan. So currently, the city council is considering increasing the monthly street maintenance fee residents pay and dedicating it to these pedestrian improvement projects.
Okay, so what specifically would we see in terms of projects that would benefit bikers and pedestrians?
Well, so one example of a large project we just completed was the Boons Ferry Road project. So Boons Ferry Road runs through Lake Grove, which is one of our two town centers. This was a $40 million town center revitalization that both beautified the commercial area while adding accessible and safe pedestrian infrastructure. So even though this is one of our two town centers, before this project, we didn't even have sidewalks in some places, and there was no ADA, that's the Americans with Disabilities Act infrastructure. So folks who are mobility challenged could cross the street safely. So it was really lacking, but now the street is so much more accessible, and it's so great for someone who grew up living and working near Boons Ferry to see folks out biking and skateboarding and walking on the sidewalks is a real treat.
Yeah,
great.
You've also got some affordable housing in that area, right? Or plans for affordable housing.
Exactly. So in fact, the staging area that the city used for the Boons Ferry Road project, we recently sold that staging area to Metro, and we're going to work with Metro and Clackamas County on an affordable housing project on that site, which is great because, as we know, a lot of government money that goes to urban revitalization ends up displacing many of the lowest income residents. And so we saw this as an opportunity to make sure that we can provide more opportunities for the lowest income members of our broader communities to have a place in Lake Oswego.
Well, switching gears here, one thing that's been in the headlines for quite some time with Lake Oswego is some ongoing talk over Oswego Lake. City Council recently passed a resolution to convene a community dialogue around access to the lake. I know there is still, ongoing litigation with this issue, but what's the latest on all this?
Well, I just want to say, in the broad public arena, we know the topic of the lake is what many people think of when they think of Lake Oswego. But for our residents, the topic doesn't occupy, the forefront of discourse in the town. So, for example, even I, as mayor, someone who grew up here, I've never been on the lake. And if it wasn't for my being the mayor, I wouldn't give much thought to it. And that's not to take away from the fact that folks involved in the lawsuit on both sides, that issue is very important to them. So the latest in this lawsuit, it was reported last week that the emails were uncovered that showed that the judge in this trial, who happened to be our state representative back some years ago, while the lawsuit was still going on, that judge had communicated with the plaintiffs as they were seeking a legislative remedy to the lake action, since they had lost their case at the circuit court level and then at the Court of Appeals level, and they were awaiting an appeal to the state Supreme Court. Now, such communications are exactly what you would expect between a state representative and her constituents, but the issue is that she didn't disclose those conversations, so the city's filed a motion to have her removed on that basis, and the presiding judge in Clackamas County will be hearing that tomorrow.
Okay, so we'll continue to follow that situation. And last question here really quickly. Do you ever get confused with a very famous sportscaster named Joe Buck?
Well, that's the question I'd like to ask him. I mean, he must say, do people ever talk to you about that mayor in Lake Oswego?
Right. Do people ever confuse him for the mayor?
Oh, thank you very much, Lake Oswego Mayor Joe Buck. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you both. Have a great day.
You too. And of course, to stay up to date on what's happening in communities all across the area, you can check out our previous Mayor Monday segments right now on coin.com. Just click on AM Extra.